Okay.
Are we
So,
starting?
yeah.
Okay.
There are people making the argument that it's okay for, certain statues of Grant or Robert E. Lee or Abraham Lincoln or Thomas Jefferson or whoever else to be torn down because, in historical context, they weren't that awesome. We should
Not just that it's okay, but that it should be celebrated.
that it should be celebrated. That it's that this is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a sophisticated form of cowardice. I think it's a sophisticated form of trying to be nice and cover for what is fundamentally barbaric behavior. We don't live in a society where it's okay for mobs of people to decide that they're angry, so they're going to destroy things.
Right.
That's how children live. That's not how we live as adults in America.
Yeah.
Right? That's like if you could be totally just. Let's say something like Buford Forrest, right? The guy who started the KKK, whatever his name, Benjamin Buford Forrest, something like that. Whatever. The guy who started the KKK. There'd be some statue of him riding around on a horse with a hood.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, oh, this should be torn down. It's like
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
But
let's vote on it.
Yeah, let's take it to the city council. Say, hey, look, this guy started the KKK. We
Why
shouldn't have
do we
this.
have a statue
We shouldn't
of
have a
this
statue
guy?
of him in the middle of
Right,
the town, right?
right.
And then you go, oh yeah, well, then and then, right? If you have a city council that says, actually, this is a sign of our heritage, then you say, whoa, hold on a second, the problem's bigger than we thought. It's not just that this statue is sitting here from forever ago.
Yeah.
There's people on city council
Yeah.
who are going to literally defend this statue that's,
Yeah.
memorializing this guy, right?
Right.
The problem here is that even if you're morally justified in tearing down a statue of, say, Robert E. Lee, right?
Yeah.
Or of, let's say, that this recent, the Emancipation Memorial with
Yeah.
with
Lincoln. And like.
or the statue of Ulysses S. Grant. Let's even just go ahead and say, okay, well, there's a moral justification there because the arc of history bends towards progress and
Yeah.
huzzah. Let's just go ahead and admit that is morally justified.
Yeah.
And that would be that it's wrong for society to have those memorials in place.
Right.
Okay. Right? Let's go ahead and just throw them that bone.
Sure.
If you allow a mob of angry people to tear that down, you have no real moral standing. Well, you do have. You could even then, if you have a sophisticated moral standing that places the victims of historical narratives as the righteous, right? It's a sophisticated moral narrative. However, it's not going to stop
Yeah.
an angry mob of people who want to go and tear down a statue of Martin Luther King,
Right.
because those people are also morally outraged that our society is deifying a black man,
Sure.
right? So if you're going to stand on this kind of morally relativist ground and say
Yeah.
that it's okay to just go ahead and tear down these statues, and that a mob of people who gets angry enough is allowed to do that, and that we should celebrate that,
Yeah.
be careful when that is used against the statues you want in our society,
Right.
We have civic systems in place for doing things like this. You don't just tear shit down because you're an angry mob.
Right.
If we want to be ruled by angry mobs, there are plenty of other countries in the world where we could live.
And I mean, history shows us that when this kind of thing happens, it's only downhill from there. That is what creates authoritarian regimes.
Well, if we allow it to continue,
Yeah.
it does go downhill, right? Like
banning books,
that's
banning movies.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, but I like the free society that I live in. I like to be able to read about history, learn from history. I don't have to deify these guys. I don't have to pretend that they were perfect.
Right.
But I mean, it doesn't take away some of the good some of them did, especially some of these guys that actually they weren't bad.
Right.
You know what I mean? That Hans Christian Heg guy, you know?
Right.
He fought against slavery. He didn't he actually like hunt down the
Yes.
slave
And okay, so like
catchers?
again, very sophisticated moral justification. You could say, for example, and this is one of the best arguments for why those kinds of statues should come down. Mm-hmm. Right? It's one of the most sophisticated arguments for that.
What is?
I'm about to lay it
Okay.
out. One of the most sophisticated arguments for pulling those down is the idea that memorializing those kinds of things is, it's the idea that it's kind of related to the idea explored in critical race theory of like of the good whites.
Okay.
Right. Like if you're allowed to be, if we have these statues, right, they memorialize the fact that white people are good, right, and stood up against this thing, rather than memorializing the horrid history of slavery.
Right.
Right? And so it's subtle. It's a subtle distinction. It's like saying, oh, well, this is actually not a statue about slavery. This is a statue about white people who were good enough to stand up against slavery. And so it's still not doing the right job. Okay?
Yeah.
Sure. Now, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't have that statue.
Right.
It means that we might need another statue that does a better job of doing the right thing. But none of that is a justification for mob rule.
Right.
None of that. Like, this is just it's a step way down
Yeah.
in the I mean the separation of our the state as a buffer between individuals
Yeah.
and angry mobs
Yeah.
is
there for a reason.
It's there for a reason, and it's old.
Yeah.
It's older than democracy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like even you go way back into like city states and stuff. The angry mob would bring the person to the king.
Yeah.
And it would even then it was the king's. They were supposed to bring this. This person that they were. That they wanted
Yeah.
to torture and kill. They were supposed to. The angry mob was supposed to bring
Oh.
this person to the king.
And back in
And
the
the-
day,
and,
most of the time they probably didn't. They just took
but-
matters into
but
their own hands.
The law was
Yeah.
you were supposed to only the king is allowed to do this,
Yeah.
right? This kind of thing.
And
So
he
this is an
decides
old
what
innovation.
the punishment should be,
Yes.
if any.
Yes.
You don't just get to decide, oh, this person did
Right.
something wrong. We're
And
going
that-
to
and-
dismember them in the town
I know,
square.
and I'd like to. Okay, so we're not talking about dismembering people. We're talking about statues.
I know.
Got it. Fine.
Yeah.
The point is, the mob doesn't get to decide what happens.
Right.
We have systems of law in
Right.
place so that we don't have angry mobs deciding what happens.
Exactly. And destroying our cities and towns.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because they feel like it.
Yeah, because now then to bring a whole nother thing, and it's like now taxpayer dollars are going to have to pay to clean all that shit up.
That's true.
And decide what's going to go there now, and maybe they want that, and maybe that's fine for most people, but most of the people I know are not happy with that.
You should vote on it.
Right.
Like we shouldn't, or get the city council to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Follow it, go find out how to get that taken down legally, and no, we don't want to do that. We just want to tear things down. Okay, so you're lazy, and now we should put you in charge. You're lazy.
And where does it stop? This is the other thing. This is the other worrisome thing. Where does it stop? What is next? What are you going to tear down next? What are you going to try to ban or burn?
And this is the problem with allowing a mob to decide that.
Yeah.
Because a mob,
Yeah.
an angry mob, doesn't have a rationale
No.
where they're going to stop. They just do the things until they burn out.
Yeah. It's all it's fueled by emotion and
there's-
self-righteous indignation.
Yeah. There's no where's it going to stop, because it's not. The
No.
point
it might stop if we actually bring in law and order, to use an old-time term.
but I mean, so we can stop it.
Yeah.
But it's not like asking the mob, why are you doing this, is
Yeah.
going to have any effect.
No.
Or what's the point, or where's the, where's the limit of where you're going to stop throwing Molotov cocktails? Like, there
Right.
isn't one.
And I mean, not to mention just all the communities that are being destroyed throughout this. A lot of the people that are the poorest are becoming poorer.
Yes.
as they did in the 60s during the civil rights, not the civil rights movement, but the riots that went alongside that. There are studies that show that the same people they were trying to protect, they destroyed,
It decimates
and
the
it made
communities.
them more
People
poor.
don't want to invest in those communities.
And this is what's going to happen now. It's
yes.
already happening.
Nobody wants to invest in a neighborhood where the
Everything's been
evidence
destroyed.
shows
Right.
that an angry mob may just decide to burn everything to the ground.
Right.
Nobody wants to be like, oh, well, let me invest my, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to invest in, building commercial property and
condos
building
or whatever,
building homes
or
and
businesses.
yeah. Nobody wants to invest in any of that.
So the people that live there currently, they're just going to become poorer if they can't make it out of that area to
Yep.
get a job.
It becomes more of a slum. And this is yeah, it's I mean there's like you can say that the anger is understandable, and that's fine.
Sure.
You
Sure.
can say that these things are understandable,
Yes.
but you can't say that it's justified.
No.
And if you're going to say that it's justified for an angry mob to
Yeah.
decide to destroy something, don't be surprised when an angry mob destroys something you like.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Just
Or
don't
that you want to
like
protect.
it's just the angry mob is just an angry mob. They don't have like limits or reasonability. They're just
Well, that one Democratic senator was like taking a picture in Madison, and like a bunch of kids or people just like beat him up.
yeah.
And he was like, he wasn't against them. He was on their side.
Yeah.
And he was like, what's going on? I'm just trying to take a picture. And they're like beating the crap out of him.
Yes.
They don't care.
No.
Like, obviously some of them probably care, but the ones that are getting very violent, they don't give a shit.
No.
They're doing what they're doing, and
this is well diagnosed crowd psychology. I mean, like this is diagnosed, documented. Like the idea that a mob of people is unreasonable, right? It's like it's not like a bunch of people who are in the streets and angry are
rational. Yeah.
It's not like they're doing rational things, right?
Yeah.
So when they decide to burn down a black-owned business, it's like that's not helping anybody.
No.
No. But they don't care.
No.
They don't care. And it's not okay for us to just kind of... I mean, it's fine for us to say that this anger is understandable. It's not okay for us to allow that anger to go unchecked and destroy things in our society.
You find more productive ways to deal with your anger. You go through the proper channels. You don't just burn shit to the ground. That is not the way we do things. That is what a child does. They have a tantrum.
Yes.
And the parents'
you can understand. You can, like, and this is so. It sounds terrible, but it's like you can definitely understand what human beings aren't children. Like adult humans aren't children, but a mob is like a child.
It is kind
it's
of
like
an
a spoiled
angry
child.
Yeah, having a tantrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like every single individual human in that mob, you could probably pull them aside and have a conversation with them. They'd be a rational person.
Yeah.
But within that context, they start throwing bricks through
They kind of
windows
get
and lighting
fueled
shit on
off
fire.
each other.
Yeah. And that's just how that's just mob, like that's how mobs work.
Yeah.
Right? That's how like an angry group of people in the streets works. And that's part of the reason why revolutionaries like to stoke that kind of anger, because it's easy to kind of get that kind of group who's mad at something and just kind of go like, there's the enemy, and then everyone goes, yeah, right? And then you've got an angry mob of irrational people who are willing to go and burn something down.
Yeah.
It's a great tactic, but just because an angry toddler is flailing around the ground doesn't mean that you should just kind of allow that child to start burning things.
Right, and have no consequences for its actions.
It doesn't mean that you just kind of let it tear the TV down and like smash things, right? It's like no, this is
even
not okay.
if you can understand why the child is angry.
Right.
Again, there are different ways of dealing with our anger.
And now this is terrible because it sounds so like paternalistic and kind of infantilizing, and it's like it's not that I want to say any particular person or group of people is or are like infants. I'm not trying to say that.
No,
okay,
no,
like
no,
I'm not.
no.
This is not. This is not black people are infants.
No,
okay, this is not that.
fuck, no, hell no.
And I just kind of like was realizing that. But a mob of people are definitely like a you know.
It's mostly the white woke folk that are doing this. Honestly, like I mean, I'm not saying there aren't BLM people involved in this, but like I've mostly seen white people tearing down statues, graffitiing monuments, acting like petulant children.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, I don't know. I don't have much else to say about it. The point is, we live in a society where there are laws.
Yeah.
And the invention of the state as a mediator between violent mobs of people who want to tear you apart and you as an individual, right? That's a good thing.
It is a good thing. It is a good thing. If you turn the tables, if you look at it from a different perspective, how would you feel if a statue that you actually felt good about, or at least felt okay about?
I don't even. This is the other thing, right?
Yeah.
We've said this a bunch of times. I don't like feel any way about any of these statues.
I don't particularly care about memorializing these guys. It's not like I'm like, oh, poor Lincoln or Grant. Like, they were so amazing. It's not even about that. It's partially about the art. It's partially about like, hey, these are parts of our city, but if you want or you feel like this should be torn down, then I wish people would go through the proper channels to do so.
Right.
Because I just don't agree with just taking your anger and it's like all of a sudden it's just like, oh, all these statues need to come down. It reminds me of these different countries like Maoist China, Venezuela, these cultural revolutions where stuff really went sour after people erased all the history.
Because they want to erase the history because they want to tell a new story about the history.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things, that's to a certain extent, that's obviously a fine thing because we constantly need to re-examine our history.
Sure.
And, re-examine our narratives.
Exactly.
That's fine.
Yes.
But it doesn't require tearing things down because if you tear things down, you're taking away the things that we examine.
And yeah, exactly. I mean, those are reminders to us that, hey, like, look at these people, and while they may have done some good things, look at all these bad things they did. And we can learn from history, and we're continually getting better. And it shows us how far we've come, and it can also let us know that, hey, we still have a ways to go. We're never going to be perfect, but let's keep trying to get better.
Here's another one. I'm totally partial to the argument, oh, well, these things shouldn't be, memorializing the Confederacy or whatever on public property. They should be, if we're going to, learn from history, then they should be in a museum where the rest of the history is, not standing on. It's like, okay, I'm partial to that, right? But these people aren't tearing down statues of Lincoln and putting them in a museum. Right. They're tearing it down and covering it in spray paint and saying, fuck cops.
Right.
Like, this is not the same thing, and it's stupid to defend that.
Right.
Like, it's not a matter of whether or not their anger is understandable. It's not a matter of whether or not the moral argument against having those monuments in place is a good one. That doesn't even matter.
Right.
The point is, it is immoral for a mob to tear things down. Yeah.
Just because they feel like
because they're angry.
Yeah.
That's not how we not how we do any of this.
Yeah.
It's not how we do any of this.
Yeah.
And the most worrisome thing about this is that if the right wing decides to do that kind of stuff, it's going to be bloody.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be really bloody and bad.
Well,
because the right wing has a lot of guns, right? And they have kind of a natural ethnocentric cohesion.
Right.
Right? They can form some sort of kind of fascist insurrection. And everyone's claiming that that's what's happening. All right? Everyone's kind of going, that's what's happening. Like, that's not what's happening. No. You haven't seen that yet. If you start to see that, you're going to see a lot of blood.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to get really ugly really fast. And so we cannot allow...
And this is the other reason I'm scared.
We cannot allow for it to become a norm in any way that whataboutism can be used, right? We can't allow a right-wing whataboutism to, hey, let's have angry mobs destroy shit. Because if we get a whataboutism from the right, where it's, hey, let's have right-wing angry mobs destroy shit, it's going to get bloody and ugly. That's no
This is
good.
the thing. Extremism on either side of the aisle, I am not okay with.
It's
you know?
no good. You can't start making this kind of thing like, oh, well, this is okay, and we'll just justify it. You cannot justify this stuff.
Yeah.
If you justify mob violence, if you justify lawlessness because people are angry, you're going to get lawlessness because people are angry. And if it's, you don't want this kind of lawlessness
No.
where people are angry. We don't need to deteriorate into that.
No.
And so we can't be justifying that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, what we're going to sit around going like, oh, yeah, when people shoot up synagogues, it's, it's just because they're, or people go and deface mosques, they're angry, and so let's talk about how, well, these Muslim people, we got to understand that, they're killing people. It's like, that's not an excuse to go and burn down a mosque.
Because the other thing is the people who are going to mosques in this country, maybe even most of them that go to ones in the Middle East, are mostly peaceful.
Yes.
The extremists might also visit those mosques, but they are probably in the minority of Islamists. You know what I mean? You can't go and deface those mosques just because some of those people are violent terrorists.
And you can't start normalizing the defense of outraged mobs.
Yeah.
Outraged mobs are not the way we handle things in a civilized society.
No.
If you start normalizing the idea that it's okay for an outraged mob to go and be violent and destroy things, burn down communities, topple statues, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Start saying, okay, well, that's fine.
Right. Then where does it end? And
well,
what happens with the
the reactionary force is going to be bad, right?
Yes.
Like you're going, if you this is what happens over and over and over again. We see the left wing, kind of, because generally speaking, the left is more creative. They push some kind of tactic on society, and then the right wing appropriates it and goes, okay, well, what about this?
Yeah.
And it's even got a name now. It's like whataboutism, right? It's like, well, what about this? What about this?
I hadn't heard
what
that
about
one.
this? Whataboutism, right?
Yeah.
So and it's gotten to the point where it's, if you say, well, there's literally Nazis marching in Charlotte, in North Carolina, then, you go, well, what about Antifa?
Right.
You get there are literal Nazis marching in the street. What about Antifa?
Right.
You get this, right?
Yeah.
It's not that those people are justified. Okay? It's that's a natural consequence of these actions. We cannot normalize or justify angry mobs going outside of the law to achieve their goals.
And being violent.
If you set up that game, other people will play it.
Right.
If you set up that game in society where it's like, look, angry mobs are angry and they can go outside the law and do things.
And they're justified because this, and
right?
this.
Well, then guess what? You're going to get people who decide, well, we'll form an angry mob too.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not going to be just the angry mobs that you agree with. We all have to live within the laws. We have to utilize the systems at our disposal. And if we refuse to do that, don't be surprised when your enemies refuse to do that also.
Exactly.
It's just not, this is all bad. There's nothing good about this.
Right. Very well said. Shall we...
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you listened to our rant,
We're gonna read our book now.
should we start a new stream?